The pack was dying. The forests grew brittle, the rivers ran thin, and the very connection to the moon felt severed. It all stemmed from one truth. The Alpha King was cursed, fading from the world and taking his kingdom with him. The Council, desperate and cunning, found a brutal solution in an ancient, forgotten law. They forced an 18-year-old girl, Ella Hollowbeck, to marry the dying king, binding her to a dead man walking. They saw her as a sacrifice to stabilize the pack. What they didn't know is that they just handed the kingdom's fate to the one woman whose bloodline they tried to erase, and she wasn't just a sacrifice. She was a reckoning. The sickness in the land was a physical weight. Ella Hollowbeck felt it every time she stepped outside her family's modest cottage at the edge of the Stonehold territory. The leaves on the great oaks were a sickly, mottled yellow, though it was only late summer. The air, which should have been thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, smelled of dust and decay. Ella, at 18, was pragmatic. She was a healer's apprentice, training under old woman Marjorie, and she knew the symptoms of a body failing. Their pack, the entire Blackwood Dominion, was a body in sepsis. It was all because of the king. King Theron Blackwood, the alpha of alphas, was dying. He had ruled for 50 years, a titan of a man according to the legends, but for the last 3, a creeping, blood-rot curse had wasted him away, and as the Alpha King waned, so did his land. The deer were barren, the wolves of the pack grew gaunt, and their regenerative healing, their greatest gift, had slowed to a near-human crawl. Ella was mixing a poultice for a neighboring family's child, a boy whose shifter flu had lingered for a dangerous 3 weeks when the Citadel guards arrived. 2 of them, clad in the black and silver armor of the king's personal guard, stopped their massive war horses in her yard. They didn't dismount. Their presence alone made Ella's father, Abram Hollowbeck, step out onto the porch, wiping his hands on his trousers. The Hollowbecks were a minor line, possessing no great strength or political power. They were carpenters, healers and tenders, the quiet blood of the pack. They were never visited by Citadel guards. Ella Hollowbeck, the lead guard, a man with a face like a chisel, barked. Ella stepped forward, her hand stained green with herbs. "I am." The guard unrolled a scroll. His voice was devoid of emotion. "By decree of the High Council, in accordance with the emergency protocol of the Founders' Pact, you are hereby summoned to the Citadel. You will accompany us immediately." A cold dread, sharper than the sickness in the air, seized Ella. Summoned? For what? "The Council does not explain its summons to the likes of us, girl," the guard said. "Or you. Get your cloak." "Wait." Abram, her father, stepped forward, his voice trembling but trying for authority. "You can't just take her. She's 18. She's under my protection." The second guard merely rested his hand on the pommel of his sword. The message was clear. The Council's decree was law, and in these desperate times, it was an iron-fisted law. Ella looked at her father's pale face and the fear in her mother's eyes as she watched from the window. Defiance would only get her family hurt. "It's all right, Papa. I'll go." She washed her hands quickly, grabbed a simple wool cloak, and walked to the guards, her back straight. The ride to the Citadel was silent and terrifying. The great fortress of Stonehold, carved into the mountainside, loomed over the valley. It was a place of power, of ancient magic, and decisions that shaped thousands of lives. Ella had never been inside. She was marched through vast, cold halls, the clicking of the guards' boots echoing like funeral drums. They didn't take her to the dungeons, as she feared, or to the healing wards. They took her to the heart of power, the council chamber. The massive oak doors opened. The room was a dark amphitheater, dominated by a long obsidian table. Seated around it were the 5 elders of the council, the alphas of the most powerful vassal packs, and at the head, in a high-backed chair that was not the throne, sat Lord Valerius Thorn. Valerius was smooth where the king was rumoured to be rough. He was handsome, with silvering hair at his temples and eyes as grey and cold as the winter sea. He ran the pack, in essence, while the king wasted away. He observed Ella as she was brought to the centre of the room. She felt like a specimen. "Ella Hollowbeck," Valerius said, his voice a silken, condescending drawl. "Daughter of Abram. Lineage, minor. Rank, Omega class. Healing aptitude, moderate. Age, 18. He was reading from a sheet of parchment, but his eyes never left hers. He was testing her, waiting for her to flinch. She set her jaw and met his gaze. "You wonder why you are here," he continued, steepling his fingers. "Our pack is dying, girl. You can smell it, I assume. The king, our beloved King Theron, fails." A murmur of false sorrow went around the table. The land is tied to the Alpha line. His blood weakens, the soil sours, his heart beats slower. The rivers freeze. The blood rot curse has no known cure. The healers have failed. The witches have failed. Magic has failed. He stood, pacing slowly behind his chair. But the law provides. He stopped, looking directly at Ella. An ancient, wartime pact, ratified by the first Alphas, states that in the event of a catastrophic failure of the Alpha line, a failure that threatens the extinction of the pack, the Council is empowered to enact the Blood Union Protocol. Ella's blood ran cold. She knew the legends. It was a dark piece of history, never used. "The protocol," Valerius said, "demands a union of the old blood and the new, a binding of a new, pure, unmated female of the pack to the Alpha King, a transfer of vitality, a marriage." Ella's breath hitched. "No. It is not a request," Valerius snapped, his silken mask dropping for a second. "It is a decree. The king is dying. The pack must be saved. A new generation must be secured, or his vitality must be supplemented." "Why me?" Ella's voice was a strained whisper. "I am no one. My family has no rank, no power. Surely a high-born alpha female. The high-borns are political," Valerius cut in smoothly. "Their families would tear each other apart for the perceived power, even if the king lives only another month. No, we needed someone simple, someone pliable, someone who understands duty." He smiled, a cold, thin expression, "and someone whose bloodline is clean, untouched by the political squabbles of the last century. You, my dear, are the perfect, unassuming vessel." Vessel. The word hung in the air, sterile and horrific. "You would chain me to a dying man," Ella said, her voice shaking now, not with fear, but with a sudden, boiling rage. "You would sacrifice me on the chance it might buy him a few more weeks of agony? You will do as you are told." An old, gruff alpha, Lord Gideon, slammed his fist on the table. "You will be the pack's savior. You should be grateful." "Grateful?" Ella laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Grateful to be his deathbed nursemaid, to be widowed at 18. Grateful to be the Council's pawn." Valerius stepped close to her. His alpha presence was oppressive, designed to force submission. "You will be queen. A title even for a day that your family could not dream of in 1,000 years. And if you refuse," his voice dropped to a lethal whisper, "the penalty for defying an emergency protocol is death. Not just for you, for your entire bloodline, your father, your mother. They will be declared traitors to the pack." The threat landed, stealing the air from her lungs. This was the trap. There was no choice. She looked at Valerius, at the cold, calculating ambition in his eyes. He didn't care if this worked. He was just ticking a box, showing the pack he had tried everything before. Before what? Before the king died, and he, presumably, made his own move for power. Ella saw it clearly. She was being set up to fail. She was the Council's final, failed attempt, the convenient scapegoat. When the king died, they would say, we even sacrificed a pure maiden, and still he perished. She was a prop in Valerius's play. Lifting her chin, Ella met his gaze. The healer's instinct in her warred with her fury. The pack was dying, her family was threatened, and this man was a snake. Fine, Ella said, her voice small but hard as diamond. I will do my duty. I will marry the Alpha King, she added, with a venom that surprised even herself. And may the moon goddess have mercy on all your souls. Valerius merely smiled. Excellent. The ceremony will be tonight. We must not delay. Prepare the bride. Ella was not prepared as a bride. She was processed like livestock. She was handed over to two grim-faced attendants, who stripped her of her simple wool dress, scrubbed her raw in a cold bath, and forced her into an ancient, heavy gown of silver silk. It smelled of dust and cedar, as if it hadn't been worn in a century. They bound her hair up with silver pins that bit into her scalp. No one spoke. There were no songs, no congratulations. It was a ritual of sacrifice. They led her through the darkening citadel, up a winding staircase to the king's private wing. The sickness was stronger here. The magic of the Alpha King's core was failing, and the stones of the castle felt cold and dead, no longer vibrating with his power. The guards opened two massive ironwood doors. The king's chamber, one of the attendants whispered, shoving Ella inside. The room was vast and dark, lit only by a dying fire. The air was thick, suffocating, and smelled of sickness, of dried blood and a metallic tang Ella couldn't place. A massive four-poster bed dominated the far wall, its curtains drawn. A shadow moved near the fireplace. So, a voice rasped. It was deep, but cracked with pain and weakness. The council has sent me a child, their final insult. A man stepped haltingly into the weak firelight. Ella's breath caught. This was King Theron Blackwood. She had expected a withered old man, a skeleton in robes. The man before her was, or had been, a colossus. He was easily 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders that strained the fabric of his black tunic. But the curse was visibly devouring him. His face was gaunt, his noble features sharp with agony. His black hair was streaked with grey, plastered to his forehead with a fever sweat. But the most terrifying part was the curse itself. Black, spider-webbing veins pulsed under his skin, crawling up his neck and across the back of his hands. He leaned heavily on a cane, and his breathing was laboured. He was a dying lion. And his eyes were pits of golden flame, burning with a rage and pain so profound, Ella almost stepped back. They told you this was an honour, I suppose, he rasped, taking a shuffling step closer. That you would save the pack. They told me, Ella said, forcing her voice to remain steady, that if I refused, they would kill my family. Theron stopped. He studied her, his burning eyes assessing her. He saw her plain, terrified face, the defiance in her posture. A dry, humourless chuckle escaped his lips, which turned into a racking cough. He braced himself against a table, spitting into a handkerchief. Ella saw the black ichor that stained the cloth. Honesty, he wheezed. A rare commodity in this damn castle. They are fools, girl. This union, it's a desperate ritual. It won't work. Why not? Ella asked, her healer's curiosity momentarily overcoming her fear. Because the curse is not of the blood, Theron said, sinking into a chair, his body trembling with the effort. It is a poison, an anchor of dark magic. Tying your vitality to mine will do nothing but drain you. You will wither as I do. The council has just given you a death sentence. He looked at her with a bitter, profound exhaustion. I did not ask for this. I did not ask for you. I have been fighting this thing for 3 years. I have accepted my fate. All I asked was to die with dignity. And they send me a sacrificial lamb. My name is Ella, she said, her anger returning. I am not a lamb, and I do not intend to wither. Theron's lips quirked. No? What do you intend to do, child? Pry the poison from my veins with your fingernails? I am a healer, Ella said, taking a step toward him. Stop, he roared. The force of his alpha command, even weakened, hit her like a physical blow. She froze. Do not approach me, he whispered, his eyes blazing. The proximity of another wolf, it feeds the curse. It makes the pain worse. It craves life. Your presence here is agony. Ella's healer's mind recoiled. A curse that fed on life force. That's why the pack is sick. You're not just waning. It's drawing from the land through you. She has a brain, Theron muttered to himself. Valerius must have overlooked that. He prefers his pawns stupid. He pointed a shaking finger toward an adjoining door. That will be your room. You are, by law, my wife. You will be, by my command, my prisoner. You will stay in that room. You will not touch me. You will not speak to me. You will wait for me to die. That is the only mercy I can offer you. Do you understand? Ella looked at the man who was now her husband. He was arrogant, broken, and in unimaginable pain. He was pushing her away, not just from cruelty, but because her very presence hurt him. I understand, she said quietly. Good. Now go. The matron of the ceremony will be here at moonrise. We will speak the words, sign the pact, and then you will leave me to my misery. Ella turned and walked toward the adjoining room. As she reached the door, she paused. You said Valerius prefers his pawns stupid. Theron watched her, his expression guarded. He chose me, King Theron, Ella said. He thinks I'm a pliable, simple-minded vessel. He thinks I'm going to fail. He's counting on it. You should ask yourself why he is so certain this ritual won't work. She didn't wait for an answer. She swept into her new room, her prison, and shut the door, leaving the Alpha King alone in the darkness, a seed of doubt planted in his poisoned mind. The wedding was a mockery. At moonrise, a grim-faced priestess, the matron of the moon, arrived with Lord Valerius. The ceremony was held in Theron's sick room. The air was thick with the scent of burning sage, a futile attempt to purify the rot. Theron had to be helped to his feet by his beta, a large, silent man named Marcus, whose eyes were filled with a mixture of loyalty and despair. Theron's face was a mask of stoic agony. Ella stood opposite him, her hands clammy. The matron spoke the ancient words of the blood union protocol. It wasn't a ceremony of love. It was a contract of spiritual binding. Theron of the line of Blackwood, do you accept this union to bind your blood to her blood, your life to her life, in the eyes of the moon, to save the pack? Theron's jaw was tight. He looked at Valerius, who watched with a look of cool satisfaction. I accept. Ella of the line of Hollowbeck, do you accept this union to bind your blood to his blood, your life to his life, to offer your strength for the survival of the pack? Ella looked at the floor. Her family's lives hung in the balance. I accept. The matron brought out a silver ritual knife. The binding. She pricked Theron's thumb. A single drop of black, viscous blood welled up. She then turned to Ella. Ella offered her own thumb, and the matron pricked it, a drop of bright, healthy red. The matron pressed their thumbs together. The moment their blood mingled, Ella gasped. It was not a gentle transfer of energy. It was a violent, painful pull. She felt a stream of her own warmth, her vitality being siphoned from her. It rushed into Theron. Theron roared. It was a sound of pure agony. The black veins on his skin pulsed, flaring up like lightning, and he collapsed, dragging Marcus down with him. "What's happening?" Ella cried, staggering back, feeling suddenly lightheaded and cold. "It's working!" Valerius said, his voice sharp. "It's killing him," Marcus bellowed, trying to hold his alpha. "No," Theron gasped from the floor, his eyes rolling back. "It's fighting. The curse. It hates her." Valerius watched, his expression unreadable. "The union is complete. Matron, you are dismissed. Beta Marcus, put the king to bed." "Your Grace," he said to Ella, his voice dripping with false respect, "you have done your duty." He smiled, a victor's smile, and swept from the room. Marcus and a guard managed to get Theron onto his bed. The king was unconscious, his breathing shallower than ever. The binding, it seemed, had only accelerated the curse. "Get out!" Marcus growled at Ella, his eyes wet with rage. "You've done enough." "I didn't." "Get out!" Heart pounding, Ella fled to her adjoining room and locked the door. She slumped against it, trembling. She was now, officially, Queen Ella of the Blackwood Pack. And she had just, it seemed, all but murdered her husband. Days passed, or perhaps it was a week. Time blurred in the oppressive silence of the King's Wing. Ella was a prisoner. Meals were left outside her door. She saw no one but the occasional silent attendant. She could hear, through the thick stone wall, the King's suffering, his pained gasps, his occasional roars of delirium, and the low, concerned murmurings of Beta Marcus. Ella's own strength began to wane. She felt a constant, dull drain, like a small, open wound that would not close. Her skin grew paler. Dark circles formed under her eyes. The bond was real, and it was slowly killing her, just as Theron had predicted. But Ella Hollowbeck was not pliable. She was not stupid, and she was a healer. Her room was large and opulent, a cage of velvet and gold. It also contained a small, dusty library, forgotten by the attendants. It was the Queen's library, filled with the journals of past lunars. On the third day of her imprisonment, she began to read. She tore through the books, looking for anything. She found etiquette, pack management, treaties. And then, tucked in the back of a hollowed-out book of histories, she found a small, leather-bound diary. It was not signed by a queen. It was signed by A.H. Ella opened it. The first page read, "Property of Amelia Hollowbeck, healer to the first queen." Her ancestor. Ella devoured the journal. It spoke of the founding of the pack, of the magic of the first Alpha and Luna. And then she found the passage that made her blood turn to ice. The moon goddess, in her wisdom, knew the Alpha's power was a raging fire, prone to corruption from the earth. She blessed the first Luna, my sister, with the balance. But to her line alone she gave a secret gift. Not the gift of ruling, but of cleansing. The blood of our line, the Hollowbeck line, is the silent water. It cannot rule, it cannot command. But it alone can wash the Alpha's fire clean of any shadow curse. It is the moon's grace, the antidote to all that taints the king. Ella stared at the page, her family, her blood. It wasn't just clean and untouched. It was the antidote. Valerius hadn't known. Or had he? She reread the passage. It alone can wash the Alpha's fire clean. But the binding hadn't washed him clean. It had fought the curse. Theron himself had said it. The curse, it hates her. It wasn't a passive curse. It was a sentient poison, and it recognized her blood as its enemy. The ritual, forcing their life forces together, had simply pitted her vitality against the curse in a raw tug-of-war. A war she was losing. Valerius had to know. He must have read this. He chose her because of this. He knew her blood was the antidote, so he forced a ritual that wouldn't use the antidote, but would be destroyed by the curse. He was using the curse to kill both the king and the only cure at the same time. He wasn't just letting the king die. He was murdering him. And he was using Ella as the weapon. A cold, hard fury settled in Ella's stomach. She was not a lamb. She was not a vessel. She was a healer, and she would not be used. She waited until the deepest part of the night, when the castle was silent, save for the king's ragged breathing on the other side of the wall. She picked the lock on her door with one of the silver pins from her hair. She was going to see her husband, and this time he wouldn't turn her away. Ella slipped into the king's chamber. The fire was dead. The only light was the pale, sickly moonlight filtering through the high windows. The room was freezing. Theron was on the bed, lying on his back. He was frighteningly still. The black veins of the curse covered his entire torso, pulsing with a faint, dark light. He was unconscious, his breathing so shallow she could barely see his chest rise. Beta Marcus was asleep in a chair by the door, his head slumped on his chest, exhausted. Ella moved silently, her healer's senses taking over. She ignored the royal protocols. She ignored the king's command. This was her patient. This was her husband. She stood over him, studying the curse. She could feel it. It was a living thing, a parasite of dark magic anchored to his heart. The bond she shared with him now gave her a terrifying insight into his agony. "It's not just a poison," she whispered, her hands hovering over his chest. "It's a sigil, a spell." She had to break his command. "King Theron," she whispered. No response. "Theron!" She laid a hand on his forehead. It was ice cold. But the moment her skin touched his, Theron's eyes flew open. They were no longer golden. They were solid black. He roared, a sound that was not his own, and his hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. His grip was iron, crushing. The black veins on his arm seemed to jump toward her, trying to crawl onto her skin. "It told you to stay away!" he snarled, his voice a distorted echo. Ella cried out in pain, but she didn't pull back. "That's not you talking, Theron. That's the curse. Fight it." "It is me. It is all that is left." Marcus was instantly awake, his sword drawn. "Get away from him, your grace." "No," Ella shouted, bracing her other hand on Theron's chest. "It's the curse, Marcus. It's controlling him. It's afraid of me." She focused past the pain in her wrist, past the siphoning drain. She focused on the journal, the silent water, the moon's grace. Her blood wasn't a weapon to be thrown at the curse. It was an antidote to be administered. "Theron!" she yelled, pouring all her will, all herself, into the bond between them. "I am your wife. I am your queen, and I am your healer. You will not let this thing take you." She pushed her own energy, her vitality, not at the curse, but into him, into the man beneath the curse. Theron screamed. It was a sound of breaking, of something tearing. The black in his eyes flickered. A sliver of gold appeared. "Ella!" he gasped. The grip on her wrist slackened. The black veins retreated, receding from his neck and hands, back toward his chest, like a spider recoiling. He fell back against the pillows, panting. The golden flame color returned to his eyes, though they were clouded with pain. He stared at her, his expression a mixture of awe and terror. What did you do?" he breathed. I don't know," Ella said, rubbing her bruised wrist. I think my bloodline. It's the antidote. The curse. It's afraid of it." Marcus stared, his sword lowering. "By the moon." Theron looked at his own hands. The skin was pale but clean. The pulsing darkness was gone, settled back over his heart. He was still dying, but for the first time in 3 years, the curse had been pushed back. He looked at Ella, truly saw her. This pale, exhausted 18-year-old girl who had just faced down the dark magic that had brought a kingdom to its knees. You're a Hollowbeck," he whispered, a sudden dawning realization on his face. "You know of my family?" Ella asked, stunned. "My father's journals, before he died. He was researching the old lines. He was worried about a shadow in the council. Theron's eyes hardened. He wrote of the silent water. He believed the Hollowbeck line had been hunted into extinction. By whom? He never found out. Valerius, Ella and Theron said at the same time. The air in the room crackled with the sudden, horrific truth. He didn't know your line was still pure, Theron said, his mind working fast. The fog of the curse lifted for a moment. He thought the Hollowbecks were gone, or so diluted they were useless. He chose you as his final, symbolic failure. He chose the one person who could cure you, Ella finished, her heart hammering. He did him to fail. He set me up to fail. And the ritual, Theron continued, his voice growing stronger with rage. The blood union protocol. It's a perversion of the true rite. The true rite isn't a binding, it's a cleansing. He knew your blood was the cure, so he forced a ritual that would ensure the curse consumed your blood, rather than your blood consuming the curse. This was the twist. This was the conspiracy. Valerius Thorn hadn't just watched the king die. He had inflicted the curse himself, and then, in a masterstroke of arrogance, had chosen the only cure as his final pawn, setting her up to be destroyed alongside the king. Marcus, Theron snapped. The beta was at his side, his face grim. Alpha, seal the king's wing. No one enters. No one leaves. Not even Lord Valerius. Tell the guards we are communing. The queen is healing me. And Lord Valerius? Marcus asked, his hand itching for his sword. Lord Valerius, Theron said, a slow, predatory smile touching his lips, is about to find out what happens when a pawn takes the king. He turned his gaze back to Ella. The arrogance was gone. The despair was gone. In its place was a resolve of iron. Healer, he said, his voice no longer a rasp but a command. You have your antidote. I am your patient. Cure me. And then we will hunt. The journal is a start, Ella said, her voice gaining confidence. But it's incomplete. It says the blood is the antidote, but the ritual Theron mentioned, the true rite, it's not in here. It must have been destroyed. They were in Theron's private study, adjoining the bedroom. It had been 2 days since Marcus had sealed the wing. Twice Valerius had come, demanding entry, and twice Marcus had blocked him, citing the king's orders. Valerius's cool facade was cracking. His rage had been palpable, even through the oak door. Theron was sitting up, though his body was still weak. Ella's presence, her focused will, was keeping the curse at bay. It was still anchored to his heart, but it was sullen, dormant, no longer actively feeding. The constant drain on Ella had lessened, replaced by a deep, aching exhaustion. They were in a stalemate. If the ritual is gone, we invent a new one, Theron stated. He was pacing his study, looking at old maps. The temporary reprieve from the pain had brought the Alpha King roaring back to the surface. We have the ingredients. My cursed blood, your healing blood. We just need the catalyst. It's not that simple, Ella insisted. She was looking at a diagram of the human body in one of her own healing texts. The curse is a sigil, Theron. It's anchored to your heart. We can't just pour my blood on it. The original rite was likely a transfer. The curse has to be drawn out. It has to choose to leave you. And why would it do that? Marcus asked, standing guard by the door. It's winning. Because, Ella said, a slow idea forming, we offer it a better home. Theron stopped pacing. What are you saying? It feeds on life, on alpha life. That's why it's killing you and the land, Ella said, thinking aloud. My blood is poison to it. It won't go near it, but it hates my blood. What if we use that? We don't try to kill the curse. We try to evict it. She looked at Theron. We need to perform the ritual, not a binding, a cleansing. I will use my blood to flush it out, but it has to have somewhere to go. You, Theron said, his voice flat. "It will try to anchor to you." "And it will fail," Ella said, holding up the Hollowbeck journal. "My blood is the silent water. It will trap it, and once it's trapped in me, I can destroy it." Theron slammed his fist on the desk. "No, absolutely not. I will not have you risk yourself. That is a suicide mission. If it anchors to you, even for a second." "It is the only way," Ella argued, her eyes flashing. "You are an alpha. Your body is a fortress. Mine is a vessel. It's easier to cleanse. The journal says our line is meant to wash the alpha's fire clean. It's my purpose, Theron. Don't you see? This is why I was brought here. Not by Valerius, but by the moon." He stared at her, this 18-year-old girl, radiating a certainty that shook him to his core. She was no longer a pawn. She was his queen. "If you die, Ella—" "I won't die," she said. "But you will if we do nothing, and Valerius will take this pack and drive it into ruin. We are out of time, Theron. He knows something is wrong. He will not wait much longer." Theron nodded, his jaw set. "Marcus, we need 3 things. Salt from the ancestral caves, silver in powdered form, and wolfsbane. The true wolfsbane, the one that doesn't kill, but silences the wolf." Marcus nodded. "The silencing herb. It will cut you off from your power, Alpha." "Exactly," Theron said. "If the curse is feeding on my alpha power, we will starve it. We will make my body a cold, undesirable home. And you," he said to Ella, "will be the only warm place for it to go. A trap." It was a terrifying, desperate plan. That night, they prepared. Marcus had slipped out of the castle and returned with the ingredients. They were in the king's bedchamber. Ella drew a large circle of salt on the stone floor, with a smaller circle inside it, using the powdered silver. "The salt binds, the silver purifies," she explained, her hands shaking slightly. Theron drank a tea, laced with the true wolfsbane. He grimaced as the foul liquid went down. Within moments, he groaned, slumping. I can't feel my wolf," he gasped. The golden flame in his eyes dimmed, leaving only the man. He was vulnerable. "It's working," Ella said. "Marcus, help him into the circle, the outer one." Marcus helped the weakened king, now just a man, into the salt circle. "Now," Ella said, taking a deep breath. She took the ritual knife, the one from their wedding, and stood in the center silver circle. "Theron, when the curse leaves you, it will be the worst pain you have ever felt. Do not fight it. You must release it. Do you understand? You must let it go." He nodded, his face pale and sweating. Ella raised the knife. "Marcus, whatever happens, do not break the salt circle." She sliced her own palm. Bright red, pure blood welled up. She let it drip onto the silver powder. The silver ignited, not with fire, but with a cold, blue light. The circle flared. In the outer circle, Theron screamed. The curse, anchored to his heart, suddenly felt the loss of his alpha power. It was starving, and just a few feet away, it sensed the raw, vibrant, hateful life force of Ella, amplified by the silver. It was a trap, and it knew it. But it had no choice. The black veins on Theron's chest writhed, pulling away from his skin. It looked like living tar, a shadow detaching itself from his body. Theron convulsed, roaring in agony as the thing ripped itself from his heart. "It's coming!" Marcus yelled. A formless shadow, a mass of writhing darkness, shot from Theron's chest across the space between the circles and slammed into Ella. Ella was thrown backward, but the silver circle held her. The shadow enveloped her, and she screamed, a sound Theron had never heard, a sound of pure, spiritual violation. The curse was trying to anchor to her heart. "Ella!" Theron crawled toward her, but Marcus held him back. "The circle, Alpha, don't break it!" Ella was on her knees, shaking. It's strong," she choked out. The shadow was trying to poison her. "No!" she yelled. She pressed her bleeding palm against her own chest. My blood is the silent water. My blood is the moon's grace. You have no power here. You are cleansed. She poured her own will, her own magic, into her blood. The shadow shrieked. It was being dissolved, neutralized by the pure antidote of her lineage. The blue light from the silver circle flared blindingly, consuming the darkness. And then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. The light died. The shadow was gone. Ella collapsed, falling to the stone floor. Ella! Theron, his strength returning as the wolfsbane wore off, scrambled from his circle and crawled to her. He turned her over. She was deathly pale, unconscious, and a thin trickle of black blood, the curse's remnants, ran from her nose. But she was breathing. Theron touched her face. Her skin was warm. He looked at his own hands. They were clear. He touched his chest. The pain, the agonizing, 3-year-long tearing in his heart, was gone. He was whole. He felt his wolf surge back, stronger than he had in a decade. He felt the connection to his land, to his pack, slam back into place. He could feel the trees in the forest, the water in the river. He looked down at the 18-year-old girl who had saved him, the girl he had dismissed, the girl who was his wife. Marcus, Theron said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble, thick with his restored alpha power. Alpha, Marcus said, kneeling, his head bowed in reverence. Guard the queen. Use your life. Theron scooped Ella up and carried her to his bed, laying her gently on the pillows. He turned and walked to the door. I'm going to have a word with Lord Valerius. When Theron Blackwood strode from the king's wing, he was not the man who had hidden there for 3 years. The dying, shuffling creature was gone. In his place was the Alpha King. His power rolled off him in palpable waves, a physical force that made the Citadel guards snap to attention, their eyes wide with shock and fear. He was not just healed, he was restored. The vitality Ella had preserved and the rage he had nurtured combined into a terrifying aura. He didn't walk to the council chamber. He walked to the throne room, which had sat empty for years. "Send for the council," he commanded the guards at the door. "Tell them the king waits, and bring me Lord Valerius Thorn. Now." The summons flew. Within 10 minutes, the 5 elders of the council hurried into the throne room, their faces a mixture of confusion and terror. They saw Theron, not on his sickbed, but on the great obsidian throne, his presence filling the room, his golden eyes burning cold. "My king, Lord Gideon," the gruff old Alpha stammered, falling to one knee. "It is a miracle. It is a reckoning, Gideon." Theron's voice boomed, echoing off the stone. "Where is Valerius?" As if summoned by name, Lord Valerius Thorn entered. He stopped dead, his smooth, political mask shattering for one, priceless second. He saw Theron, whole and powerful. He saw his meticulous, decades-long plan evaporate into smoke. "Theron," Valerius breathed, his hand instinctively moving to the dagger at his belt. "It is King Theron to you, usurper," Theron snarled. Valerius regained his composure instantly. He plastered on a joyful smile. "My king, you are healed. The ritual worked. The girl's vitality, it was enough. Praise the moon." He was trying to control the narrative, to fold this miracle into his own plan. Theron laughed, a cold, harsh sound. The ritual you designed? The one that was meant to kill both me and the queen?" The chamber went silent. The other council members looked from Valerius to Theron. "My king, I don't know what you mean," Valerius said, taking a half-step back. "The girl, her name is Queen Ella," Theron corrected him, standing slowly from the throne. He descended the steps, one by one. "The girl you plucked from obscurity, the simple, pliable vessel. You must not have done your research properly, Valerius. A simple mistake. You see, you chose a Hollowbeck. Valerius's blood drained from his face. He knew the name. Oh, you did know, Theron purred. You knew her line was the silent water, the only antidote to the curse your family engineered. This is madness, Valerius shouted, looking to the other elders. He's delirious. The fever, the curse is gone, Thorn, Theron said, stopping a foot from him. It wasn't a fever, it was a poison, a dark magic sigil, one that has been in your family's possession since the first usurpation, when my ancestors took the throne from yours. Now the truth was bare. Valerius's ancestor had tried to poison the first Blackwood king and failed. The recipe for the curse had been passed down, waiting. You poisoned my father, didn't you? Theron whispered, his voice deadly. A slow, weakening poison. And then you gave me the full dose 3 years ago. You watched me rot. You watched the land die. All so you could take this chair. He has no proof, Valerius yelled, desperation in his voice. It's the word of a sick man and a lying child against the Lord Regent. I am the proof, Theron said. He grabbed Valerius by the throat. It was not a human grip. It was the Alpha King's grip. He lifted the slighter man off the floor with one hand, his claws extending, piercing the skin of Valerius's neck. Valerius choked, clawing at Theron's wrist. You set her up, Theron growled. You knew her blood was the cure. So you forced us into a perverted ritual, one that would pit the curse against the cure, hoping they would destroy each other. You would have a dead king, a dead queen, and a pack so broken it would beg you to take the throne. He slammed Valerius against a stone pillar. It was a brilliant plan, but you made one mistake. You underestimated her. You underestimated me. Please, Valerius gurgled, his face turning purple. You will not be granted the mercy of a quick death, Theron said, his eyes burning with a golden, righteous fury. The penalty for regicide, for high treason against the pack, is not death. It is erasure. He looked at the terrified council members. He is no longer Lord Thorn. He is no longer Alpha. He is no longer Wolf. Theron closed his eyes and summoned his power. He did not kill Valerius. He did something worse. He reached into the man's spirit and tore his wolf from him. Valerius screamed, a horrific, soul-tearing sound that was half man, half wolf. His body convulsed, and then he went limp, falling to the floor in a heap. He was just a man. A pale, shaking, broken man. The alpha power, the connection to the pack, the inner beast, all of it was gone. It was a fate worse than death for a werewolf. He is banished, Theron declared to the room. He will be cast out into the wasting wilds as a man. If he survives, it will be by the moon's grace, not mine. The rest of you, he said, turning to the trembling council, will be investigated. Every one of you. Your loyalty will be tested. Your histories will be read. The age of shadows is over. He turned, his black cloak sweeping, and strode from the throne room, leaving the council to deal with the shell of the man who had almost destroyed them all. He had a queen to attend to. Ella woke slowly. The first thing she felt was warmth. The cold, persistent drain was gone. The second thing she felt was a hand, calloused and strong, holding hers. She opened her eyes. She was in the king's bed. Theron was sitting in the chair beside it, watching her. He was not the dying king. He was dressed in clean leathers, his black hair tied back. The gaunt sickness was gone, replaced by a vitality that was almost overwhelming. The black veins were a memory. He was, Ella realized with a jolt, magnificent. You're healed, she whispered. Her throat was raw. We are, he corrected her. His voice was deep, gentle. He brought a cup of water to her lips, and she drank gratefully. The land. I can feel it, Ella. The rivers are clearing. The blight is receding from the trees. You saved us. You saved me. Valerius, she asked, sitting up. Is dealt with, Theron said, a dark flicker in his golden eyes. He is no longer a threat. The council is being purged. Ella sagged back against the pillows, the relief profound. It was over. They were silent for a long moment. The forced marriage, the curse, the conspiracy. It had all happened so fast. Now, in the quiet aftermath, they were just a man and a woman, bound together by the most bizarre, terrifying circumstances. You are my queen, Ella, Theron said, his voice soft. The council forced this. I know that. I know you were given no choice. You have saved this pack. You are free. Ella looked at him. Free? I will not hold you to this. This marriage was a lie, a tool used by a traitor. If you wish to return to your family, if you wish to find a new life, I will grant you anything. Riches, lands, your own title. You have earned it. He was offering her an exit, the noble, kingly thing to do. Ella thought of her small cottage. She thought of mixing poultices for shifter flu. It felt like a lifetime ago. It felt like a life that no longer fit. She looked at the man in front of her. She had seen him at his absolute worst. Broken, dying, consumed by darkness, and she had seen him rise from it. He was arrogant, yes. He was an alpha king, but he was also honorable. And he was, she realized, the other half of the bond that still hummed between them. It was no longer a siphon. It was a connection. You're an idiot, Theron, she said. His eyebrows shot up. Your Grace? You think this is something I can just walk away from? Ella pushed herself up. I am a Hollowbeck. My blood is the silent water. My purpose, for generations, has been to protect the Alpha line, to cleanse it. That's not a job, Theron. It's who I am. My place is here. He stood, his expression unreadable. As my healer? No, Ella said, meeting his gaze, her heart pounding a new, unfamiliar rhythm. As your wife, as your queen, unless of course you wish to annul it. Perhaps you'd prefer a high-born alpha female, now that you're no longer dying. A slow smile spread across Theron's face. It was the first true smile she had ever seen from him, and it transformed his harsh features into something devastatingly handsome. A highborn, he mused, stepping closer to the bed. They sound dreadfully boring. They have no experience in lock-picking. They certainly don't have the courage to yell at their king, and I am quite certain none of them could trap a 500-year-old curse. He sat on the edge of the bed, taking her hand. His was warm and strong. They forced you to marry a dying king, Ella. But I am not that man anymore. The man I am now, he is asking. Stay. Not as my healer. Not as a political prisoner. Stay as my partner, my queen. The woman who saved my soul. Ella looked at their joined hands. The 18-year-old girl who was a pliable vessel was gone. In her place was a woman who had faced down the darkness and won. In her place was a queen. I will stay, Ella said, her voice clear and strong. On one condition. Anything. You stop calling me child or girl. You will call me by my name. Theron Blackwood, the Alpha King, laughed. He leaned in and, for the first time, kissed his wife. It was not a kiss of passion. Not yet. It was a kiss of profound respect. A kiss of promises. A kiss of a new beginning. From the window, the first rays of a healthy golden sun broke through the clouds, touching the land that was, finally, healing. And so, the 18-year-old girl who was forced to marry a dying king became the queen who saved a nation. Ella and Theron's story wasn't easy, but it's a powerful reminder that true strength isn't about political power or a loud voice. It's about the courage to face the darkness, even when you're terrified. Lord Valerius, in his arrogance, thought he could control everyone. He underestimated the simple girl, and that was his downfall. Justice wasn't just served, it was delivered by the very person he thought